let's talk about the defense, fellas, because this is a much different kind of conversation. There's a lot more veteran players that we could talk about here in this conversation. But I think this side of the ball, even more so than on offense, your success hinges on the players we're going to talk about today. And there are some veteran players at Notre Dame that have opportunities to be really big difference makers for Notre Dame and haven't been so far for different reasons for each guy. But if this group of veterans that we're going to talk about today can step up and really take their games to that next level, then I think this football team is really going to be dangerous. And a lot of the conversation is going to be focused on the front seven. And I'm going to call an audible a little bit here as well, guys, but I'm going to start off inside. I want to go inside and talk about guys who literally have their last chance to make an impact at Notre Dame. And that's Gabriel Rubio and Jaylen Onier. And I think they kind of go together. The reasons they haven't really been difference makers are for different reasons. Part of it is for both of them is health. Gabriel's had a tough time being healthy for entire seasons. Even he's a big, strong kid. He hasn't been a guy. He's been a very steady, stout stuffer, but not a playmaker for the most part. He goes into a season where now he's the guy being counted on to be a strong difference maker type of player. His difference making is not going to look like Riley Mills. It won't look like Howard Cross. It's more so like you can't run at him anymore. I mean, and then he'll make some plays. Jaylen Onier was not the highly ranked recruit that Gabriel was, but Vince, you and I talked about him a long time ago. Yes, and started talking about him, and he was a guy that we talked about early on when this channel launched. That's how long Jason's been committed to Notre Dame. He committed as a junior. This is a young man that we've always said raw, needs a lot of work, but the upside was enormous. We saw that last spring, and he had some flashes of that in the fall in some of those games. There were times where we were talking about, and Ryan was on the show for a couple of those too, talking about like, I kind of think in this game, in the post-game show, that Jaylen Onier was their best tackle in this game. There are multiple times that you guys were talking about that in post-game shows. And then, of course, the season's ends because of something off the field, and he's not to be heard of. We don't know if he's going to be back or not. He did everything that they asked him to do to get back on the team and get back in good graces. And what does he do? He comes out this spring and looks exactly like he did last spring, which is a huge mark.
And he did it as a bigger dude, too. Like
with like 10-plus pounds.
He looked visibly bigger, doing the same athletic things that he was doing last spring, but in a bigger body. Like the 47 looks weird on him at this point. Like, you know what I mean? Well, like it's kind of hard to describe.
But it does look a little.
Yeah, I don't know. It just
but I go back. There's some great 40s. You know, Jim Flanagan was a great defensive lineman in their name with number 44. But I think Pete Bursich was number 47. I still remember him kicking off the 1993 season with a pick six. Do you remember that, Vince?
Yeah.
Against Northwestern.
It's not that the number looks weird. It just
small.
It was like, because before
he's so big now. You want like 99.
Yeah. Before he was a little slimmer, and so the 47 fit him a little better. Now it's like it's swimming on him because it's so, I don't know. It's just a weird visual, but like
but to your point though, Vince, is like last year your starting defensive line was your starting defensive tackles were, kind of athletic, especially Riley. 295 and a 285-pound guy. Mm-hmm. That was your lineup last year going into the first game of the season. It was a 295-pounder and a 285-pounder. Well, you look at these two guys, to your point, Jaylen Onier this summer checks in at 6'5", 308, and Gabriel Rubio's checking in at 6'5", 319. So different looking group. This is literally their last chance to make an impact in Notre Dame. And how well they step into those big old shoes that were left behind by Riley Mills. I don't say as much Howard Cross. I didn't think Howard Cross played that well last year.
He didn't. He played much better the year before.
Right. But still, it's stepping into that void of what Riley was last year, what Howard was 2 years ago. Can they step up? And I don't know that this defense can reach its full potential without these two guys playing very well. They don't need to be stars, but at the very least, they got to play good football and to answer the bell every week. But if one or both of them can be difference makers right in the middle of that defense, then all of a sudden Notre Dame's just going to keep doing what they've been doing on defense the last 2 years.
I feel like Gabriel Rubio did yeoman's work last year when he was kind of thrust into the lineup at the end of the year, right? So after Riley Mills goes down in the Indiana game, and Gabriel Rubio was thrust into action in the biggest games of his life, right? I mean, biggest games of any of those players' lives. And I thought he did well, right? But it's a great launching point for what he could be moving forward and as you mentioned earlier in the last show, it's one thing to come in as a backup and just play, right? And it's another thing when you're the starter and you're a dude or you're the guy, right? So what is he going to do with that opportunity? So that I think is going to be very interesting. Jaylen Onier is such a fascinating career arc. 2 years ago, so 3 springs ago, was kind of his little coming out party. Remember, he was like super vocal and he's making jokes and he's doing, all these things during spring. And he was the beat writer's dream because everybody loved writing about Jaylen Onier that spring. And then the season happened and it was like, oh yeah, I forgot that he was even on the team. Like that's how it felt to me.
Talking about 2024 or 2023?
Talk 2023.
Okay.
Yeah. 2023. And then we come back to 2024. He's the same jovial guy in the spring, and everybody's latching on to him again. Then he starts to prove it on the field, and then he gets hurt, right? Or not hurt, but not on the team. Yeah. He got hurt. Yeah, it's not on the roster.
After Game 6 or after Game 5, he was gone after the Louisville game.
Just like gone.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, okay, well, what now? And now he's back with a completely different mindset, a completely different body, it feels like. And now he's potentially the guy, right? And what is he going to do with that opportunity? These two guys are fascinating to me because of the size of them that Notre Dame hasn't had in a while. The athleticism of both of these guys together can be a very interesting duo in the middle. People talk about, and Trevor kind of mentioned this earlier, like, what are we going to watch in the spring? One of the things I'm going to watch is the interior of this defense, because not only that, how they play is going to affect how the guys behind them play, and they're ready for a breakout big time year, those guys. So but a lot of that hinges on the guys in front of them. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Trev, Vince mentioned something. He talked about, Rubio's been thrust into this spotlight before, because we do talk about how it's not the same being a backup when you come in starting lineup. What makes Gabriel's situation a little bit different, and the reason we're not talking about Donovan Hinish today is because Donovan's not entering his last chance opportunity. Donovan's got another year left, and I think Donovan's going to be fine. But being thrust into that lineup against Georgia, Penn State, and Ohio State is a whole different type of pressure than your typical backup who's got to step in the middle of the season in his first starts against Navy. And I thought Gabriel handled that relatively well.
Yeah.
But the consistency part, Trev, is going to be the key. I think of a back-to-back plays, and I think it was against Georgia. And this is exactly who Gabriel Rubio has been and who he needs to stop being. In the first play, Georgia just blows him off the ball, like 5 yards off the ball. And you're like, how does a guy that big and strong get blown off the ball? The next play, he bench presses the Georgia guard with his left hand. I think it was his left hand, and reaches out and grabs the running back with his right hand and yanks him down for a big play. And you're thinking, how does the dude who did that do what he did on the play before? That's going to be the big thing for Gabriel, is fewer of those plays like the first play and more of the plays like the second play. Because if I put the top 15 or so plays or 20 plays from Gabriel Rubio's career and just play that highlight clip, y'all be like, dude, he's living up to his top 100 ranking. But then if I put his 25 worst plays, you're like, why is that guy on the field? And that's the question that Gabriel has to answer this season. And I think he's capable of being that guy more consistently. And I think part of the issue for him is because he wasn't on the field consistently, that now you're thrust into this role where you've got to play more snaps than maybe you have before. You can understand why consistency hasn't been there. Now it's time for Gabriel to say, okay, now's my time to shine. Now's my time to be a leader of this team. Now's my time to really show that I can be a difference maker. I am that guy against the run, but also a little bit more against the pass. He gave you almost nothing against the pass last year. He was actually a pretty decent pass rusher the 2 previous years. That was at times what he did best. Last year he was pretty much a pure stout run player. Can he bring those together in his final season? Trev, if Gabriel Rubio has the kind of break, if he can be that guy that we talked about on a more consistent basis, he could be a difference maker. But to Trev's point, It's a very different type of difference maker. Notre Dame hasn't had a guy like this in a long time. Jerry Tillery was a very different player than what Gabriel Rubio is. He was more like Riley Mills, pass rusher and all that. They haven't had a 320-pound physical, or it doesn't have to be 320, but just a really stout, physical, dominant guy that you just can't move off the ball and is going to whoop you. They haven't had a guy like that in a long time. And if you put that in the middle of this Notre Dame defense, Drake Bowen's going to be buying Gabriel Rubio and Jaylen Onier some really nice Christmas presents if those kids can step up and be that and just be that consistently. That's the thing, is their highlight reel at Notre Dame is impressive. But it's just the fact that we don't get that enough that's been almost kind of frustrating. It's like you give me a piece of this really super tasty cake and then you take it away from me and I can't have it anymore. I'm not going to be happy about that. You know what I mean? I want to have all of it, and that's what Notre Dame fans, I think, are waiting for from these two young men. The good news is, Trev, I think they're both capable of it.
Well, that could not agree more. The thing that makes me comfortable about this entire conversation is we're not asking anybody to do anything that's beyond their realm of physical capabilities. When you think of an interior run stuffer like Gabe Rubio, you think of 6'5", over 300 pounds, somebody that can just eat up space. I mean, look, you watched him single-handedly bench press Tate Ratledge with one hand and then bring down Trevor Etienne with the other. So it's not like this is something we haven't seen them do before, but these are absolute. I mean, there's one play in the Jersey scrimmage, albeit the offensive lineman he was going up against, like, got his ankle rolled up on, like, earlier that practice. But there is a play that Jaylen Onier had in the Jersey scrimmage that really, really stuck out to me. Vince and I were both watching it. I remember he turned to me and he's like, "Was that?" I was like, "Yeah, sure was." It was crazy. But consistency is going to be the name of the game for both of these guys in every sense of the word. Consistently being in the lineup, consistently being around the team for different reasons. You took some time away from the program. Each player did, to get their mind right in whatever way they had to. Gabe Rubio wasn't around the team last spring. And then he came back and then unfortunately got hurt in fall camp and then wasn't able to make his return until the Stanford game. Jaylen Onier was around in the spring, summer, fall camp, poised for a breakout season, was referred to highly as one of their better, if not their best, interior defensive linemen for the first couple games of the season. And then he had to step away from the team and get some things fixed. Now they're both back. But then you go and you look at what their track record has been. Gabe Rubio hasn't played a 12-game season at Notre Dame since 2022. Jaylen Onier did it in 2023. He played in 12 games. But then the follow-up after that left some a little bit, wanting a little bit more. So this year is going to be huge for both of them. But if they can play consistently, I'm not sitting here screaming from the rooftops, pounding my fist on the table saying that every single run play, Gabe Rubio has to bench press an SEC guard single-handedly and bring down the running back with the other. But he also can't have the plays where he gets blown 3 yards off the ball.
It's just do your job and then flash the hot plays. Do your job, do your job, do your job, do your job, dominate. Do your job, do your job, do your job, dominate. It's not do your job, get dominated, dominate. I'd rather you go do your job, do your job, do your job than that high-low.
Absolutely.
Especially when you think of the kind of linebackers that Notre Dame has on this football team. So, I think those are things you look at and I say, hey, look, that's just kind of what I want to see on a more consistent basis from this group. But you talk about, what was it? Say they averaged 290 pounds last year, and this group, based on what they were in the spring, averages 313 and a half pounds. That could be a factor, especially the way that I think Chris Ash wants to play. I think the foot injury is something we got to keep in mind with Gabriel Rubio as well.
Agreed.
He is a 320-pound guy who had a foot injury in fall camp. You wonder why didn't Gabriel show the same pass rushing ability? And he's never going to, he's not going to be Riley Mills and Jerry Tillery as a pass rusher. That's not the point, but he can be a 3 to 4 sack guy and give you, 12 to 15 pressures if he's a full-time guy as a 320-pound guy, and maybe more than that. But you can't look at the fact that he was 315, I think, last year, having a foot injury and then wonder, gee, where does burst go? Well, that's where it went. But now it's up to Gabriel to kind of show that on a more consistent basis. And with Jason, I'll still never forget the play. It was the last spring, Vince. Remember the Blue Gold game where it was Billy Schrouth and Joe Otting were blocking him, and he just basically throws them both aside and goes right to the quarterback. You're like, okay, this guy's gonna be good. Now it's their last chance to show that. I have another player that I think is entering a sort of a last chance opportunity. It's not his last chance at Notre Dame, but another guy that this could be your last chance to really become a difference maker at Notre Dame, and that's Josh Burnham. And Josh was a very important player for Notre Dame last year. And he will be a very important player for Notre Dame the next 2 years. But there's two types of important. One is I'm important because I'm a dude. And the other guy's important because you're a really key role player. And that's the zone Josh Burnham's entering, because as a run defender last year, he was pretty good. I mean, we saw him early against Indiana making plays, saw him early against Georgia making plays. We saw that huge second down stop against Penn State that just does not get talked enough about how big of a play that was, is that second and goal play from the 1 yard line where he brings down Katron Allen for a loss from behind. And if he doesn't do that, if Katron doesn't score on that play, they've got 2 more cracks from the 1 yard line to get it in. The tackle for loss forces Penn State to pass. Nicholas Singleton drops the pass. They have to settle for a field goal. Instead of it being 14-0 late in the first half, it's 10-0. Well, that mattered. And you know, he's been a guy that's been a very key role player for Notre Dame the last 2 years, and was at times last year was arguably their best end at times last year. But then he gets hurt against Northern Illinois, comes back against Stanford, first game back, makes that great play on the option, which shows you Josh's length, because the quarterback's thinking there's no way this guy's going to get his paws out there on that. You're like, you don't know who Josh Burnham is. He's got really long arms. And I remember Ryan and I were sitting there at the Syracuse game, and Vince, we told you about this in the post-game show, and we're just watching him go through pregame. You're like, dude, that guy's a freaky looking athlete. Like he's got some twitch. He's got really long arms.
Yeah.
The thing about Josh, however, is Josh is a former quarterback and middle linebacker that's still learning the position. And it's about, can he take his game to the next level? And Josh is really good at, he's the opposite of Gabriel and Jason. He kind of does his job every play. That's kind of who Josh has been. And that's great. But if he can't become more of a difference maker, then he's going to go from starter and key player to really nice backup behind Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore. And if he can take his game to another level, and a lot of people we get a lot of talk about Boubacar, a lot of talk about Bryce, a lot of talk about Logan Thomas. If Josh Burnham can take his game to another level, he gives you something that I don't know that the other guys do, which is, like, especially Boubacar. Boubacar is a pass rusher right now. That's what he is. Josh is primarily a run defender who occasionally gives you some pass rushing ability. If Josh can jump his game up as a pass rusher and become more of a first and second down weapon there, then all of a sudden, instead of him and Bryce competing for a starting job, now that they're left, right, not end and Viper, they can play together. And Josh could be a huge factor early in the season as Boubacar and Jordan Patel are coming back from injury. If he can step up and be that guy, now all of a sudden you've got a real difference maker defensive end who's not only good against the run, but also can give you some in the pass game. It completely changes the complexion of this defensive end position because of his potential to be an outstanding all-around defensive end. If he doesn't do it now, though, guys, here's the flip side, Vince. If he doesn't do it now with the young talent behind him, he's going to then get thrust into sort of that it's the dude equivalent of the relationship equivalent. He's now in the friend zone. He's never going to be the star. He's always going to be the role player.
Yeah.
Like that's what's in front of Josh right now, and where he goes with this and the work he puts in and his ability to just kind of, dude, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. Just let her rip, go have some fun and go play ball. How he does this spring is going to determine whether he eventually becomes sort of a really, really good role player for Notre Dame, or does he become a driving force behind them having an elite defensive line? That's what's at stake for Josh Burnham this offseason or this fall camp.
Yeah, Trevor, I'll keep this pretty short and I'll throw it to you. I love Josh Burnham, and I think he gets kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit because he's not Bryce Young. He doesn't look like Logan Thomas. I don't know. I don't know why he gets lost in the shuffle with fans and with analysts and with different people, but like, I just feel like it's like, oh yeah, Josh Burnham, yeah, he's a good player. He kind of does his thing. Like he just gets forgotten. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity for him to remind everybody how talented he is. He's got it right in front of him. And similar to KK, that we talked about on the offensive side. If he doesn't, there's guys all around him that are ready to take those snaps. I mean, there's a lot of talent on the edge for Notre Dame right now. And I think Josh Burnham can be the guy who's out there the majority of the snaps and doing all those things. He is that talented, but he's going to have to do it, and he's going to have to be consistent with it. I think he can. We'll see what happens, Trevor.
Yeah, I think some of the reason he gets overlooked is because none of the things he does on the field, to just like a casual watcher or to somebody that just likes to tune into games, nothing that he does is like overly sexy outside of what he did against Stanford. That was nuts.
Right.
The where he essentially intercepted an option pitch. But his biggest play of the season did come against Penn State. To somebody who just kind of sits down and clicks on the TV, is like, all right, let's see what Notre Dame's doing this week. That's not oh my goodness, did you see Josh Burnham? That was a good play. Where he has the opportunity to take his game is from just being, we have Josh Burnham to, we have Josh Burnham. That's the kind of stigma that he can start to build around himself as the offseason progresses. Similar to how we talked about Eli Raridan needing to step up his game because of the depth behind him being unproven. The depth behind Josh Burnham is somewhat proven. It's young. They got to come back from injury. That's why the first quarter of the season, especially when you consider they play Miami on the road, Texas A&M at home at night, got some big games in the front slate. Number 40 on the D-line has to have that type of impact that he's capable of having, because similar to all the other players that we've talked about, we've seen him do it. We saw the play against Penn State. We saw the play against Stanford. If he can become a more well-rounded defensive end, he's going to be somebody that, one, will be very hard to keep off the field, even when Botello and Traore and they come back healthy and Bryce Young is really finding his footing. But to your point, Vince, that's kind of why. He's not 6'7". He's not 6'7", 265. He's not 6'4", 225 and runs a 4.5 40.
Right.
And so that
and he wasn't recruited to play D-line.
Exactly.
100%. He was moved there. Yeah, right. Good point.
Exactly.
Good point.
But his breakout, yeah. I always forget he was a high school quarterback. I always forget that. I remember
so many former quarterbacks on this roster,
that's not an accident.
Yeah.
It's not that they are looking for former quarterbacks. It's just they're looking for guys that are really high football IQ football.
Correct. Yeah. No.
And great leaders.
Yeah.
And Josh, that's another thing. Josh can bring a lot of that element to the table as well. It's leadership. He's the one veteran that you look at and say he's not been in trouble. He hasn't been suspended for periods of time. He hasn't been this. He hasn't been that. If there's going to be a captain on the D line, that would be my bet. Would be Josh. But now I'm okay with giving up him being a captain for him being more of a playmaker in the pass game. That's going to be the key for him. I love this next one, guys. This is an obvious. Jaylen Sneed. Jaylen Sneed enters a now or never moment for Notre Dame, and it's twofold. For him. It's, dude, you've shown the flashes. It's time to really kind of grow up as a player and start being that guy every time you're on the field. It's time to start taking your practice skills and saying, hey, you've got to work more maturely. You've got to work more consistently. You got to conduct yourself more consistently. And when you go on the field, the flashes we see need to be every down. I mean, we heard all spring, we hear from the coaches about how good Jaylen Sneed is and how good. And like the first play of the spring game, it's him and Jadarian Price in the hole. And Jadarian just, no problem, makes a miss, and he runs for 9 yards. If you don't step up your game, you're just going to get stuck in that niche player role. And you're going to get passed up real quick by Jaden Alsbury and Kingston Villamasa. And it's not a outside the realm of possibility that the linebacker rotation on first and second down this year is more of a 3-man rotation than it is a 4-man rotation, or it could be a 4-man rotation that Jaylen Sneed's not part of. That's what, if he just keeps being what he's been, will be the case. On the flip side, Trev, if Jaylen Sneed can put it all together and be more consistent with how he prepares, be more consistent with his focus and execution, be more consistent with his production, now all of a sudden you've got a 6'2", 230-pound, real athletic, real twitchy, long athlete that's shown some big playability in big games. I still remember a couple of those sideline. Talk about what does sideline to sideline speed look like. Look at Jaylen Sneed in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. That's what sideline to sideline speed looks like. It's just we don't see it as much. But if he can become that guy consistently, Trevor, Jaylen Sneed could have a huge impact on this defense, not just as a situational pass rusher, but even more so as an off-ball linebacker. That's the production that I want to see from him this year.
The situation that Jaylen Sneed is in, I would argue, is unlike any other person's situation on this list, because the people behind him nipping at his heels have played. Like, they're ready to go now. Kingston, Jaden Ausberry. We've talked about it before. The second that light bulb comes on for Madden for Amo, because then you have another long, rangy, twitchy, sideline-to-sideline kid. Preston Zinner, Bodie Cahoon, Teddy Rizak. But specifically around KVA and Jaden Ausberry, those guys are good to go now. That's why he has to step his game up, because unlike the other positions, we're talking about KK Smith. Well, once that light bulb goes on for Cam Williams, and same thing with Eli Raritan in the tight end room. James Flanagan's a true freshman, and Jack Larson's a redshirt freshman. Gabe Rubio and Jason Onier kind of in that light because of Donnie Heinisch and because of Jared Dawson, other players like that. But Jaylen Sneed specifically is in a position where if he doesn't take that next step in fall camp and honestly this summer, to really elevate his game and become an every down linebacker, not just hey, we got this kid that can rush off the edge and he's really fast. Remember, because he was a 5-star recruit. Okay, we are getting further and further away from that. And if I'm gonna hold consistent on some players in the transfer portal being rated as high because of their recruiting rankings, the same has to be true for the players that are still on Notre Dame's roster. He's taking the necessary steps to get there. He put on more weight to be able to obstruct blocks at a more effective level. Still working on it from a fundamental standpoint. You have to still work on your timing, your angles that you come in and approach and attack blockers. But now it's time to put it all together, because if you don't, you have Jaden Ausberry, who was 5th on the team in tackles last year and started 1 game behind you. You have Kingston Viliama-Asa, who's 6'3", 235, 240 pounds, that played, 80 less snaps than you did and missed 2 games. And so you start to paint the picture of what this looks like for him. If not now, then when? Because I think the coaching staff will start to have some decisions to make if not. For some of these other players, like if they don't, then they just kind of become a good role player, like what we talked about for Billy Schroutz. Like, he's a good offensive, not that elite level guy. He's going to start all season long, barring injury. He'll just be, solid. Jaylen Sneed, if he doesn't take that next step, is like, okay, well, we'll just plug in Kingston. Okay, we'll just plug in Jaden Ausberry. And so that is what's at stake for him. He has all the physical tools in the world to do it. But it's time to be that consistent practice player, that consistent in-game player, to where once the football IQ starts to match the physical traits, dude, he's going to be a nasty linebacker. But that point has to happen from now until August 31st. And if that light bulb clicks, he's going to be really good.
I feel like we've been talking about Jaylen Sneed forever too. You know what I mean? He falls into a similar category to Jason Onier in that it feels like we've been talking about number 3 at Notre Dame for a really, really long time. And I just don't know what to expect. I second everything that Trevor said, and I've seconded everything that Bryan said about who this kid is and who he could be and all of these different things. And all of it's true. All of it is true. I would have hoped that he would have done it by now, right? And that's why he's on this list, right? This is his last chance. This is his last opportunity. I ask myself, what's best for Notre Dame too, right? Is what's best for Notre Dame for him to be kind of that 3rd down linebacker and just go, see ball, get ball, sideline to sideline speed, all of those different things, and being a very successful part of this defense in that niche role? Like, is that who Jaylen Sneed is to this Notre Dame team, right? There is so much talent, to your guys' point, in that linebacker room. It's going to be really hard, in my opinion, for Jaylen Sneed to surpass these other guys to get into that rotation on 1st and 2nd down. I think it's going to be hard. He's got the ability.
I think he'll start fall camp as the number 1 will.
Okay.
Just because of he's the veteran. That's what we saw in spring.
They do that all the time. Yes, agreed.
So it's more so about, I think your sentiment is correct. I'm slightly nitpicking with what you said, simply because it's more so for him, it's about holding off.
Yeah. And those guys are right here, man.
So the sentiment's the same. It's more about holding off. I think first practice of spring for fall camp will be there. It's an open practice. So I think we're going to see when the first team defense takes the field, I think we'll see Jaylen Sneed as the first team will. And if he's not, he's done. He will not be the starting will. I expect, but now, okay, can you be that consistent player to where you hold off those guys? Because Kingston's not, it's going to be hard to keep off the field. Jaden Osbury, and I love Trev, you keep mentioning that every time we do it. Like, dude was tied for second on the team in tackles for loss, and he started one game.
Right.
And when we talk about guys being overlooked, it's interesting because what's funny is the guy that he was tied with for second on the team in tackles for loss is Josh Burnham. Who would have guessed that? Like that's the thing. It's like not many people would have guessed that. He was number 2, and he missed what? He missed the end of the Northern Illinois game. He missed the Purdue game. He missed the Miami of Ohio game. He missed the Louisville game. Josh Burnham didn't come back until the Stanford game. This was his first game back, and he's still tied for second on the team in tackles for loss. But we don't talk about him. We talk about Boubacar and Bryce Young and Logan Thomas and all these other guys, and we talk about Jaylen Sneed. Oh, how impactful Jaylen Sneed could be. Well, they need Jaylen to finally live up to the hype, and it's a big offseason for him. He's going to have to put in the work, and we're coming. It sounds like we're being real critical of him, and to a degree we kind of are, but it's more so about because we know the talent he has. That's why it's like there's a biblical teaching of, and I don't have the exact phrase, but it's basically of from those who much is given, much is expected. Right. And God's given Jaylen Sneed a lot of physical gifts. And so you expect a lot from him. But it's also about if he does step up, knowing the impact that's going to have on the Notre Dame defense this year. That's the other reason. And look, he has another year of eligibility, but I kind of view this as his last shot at Notre Dame because if he's not that guy now, I think he'll be playing somewhere else next year.
That's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's coming from a place of we want it to happen. We've all been extremely high on Notre Dame's linebacking unit this year. That includes Jaylen Sneed. We believe that at the end of the season that Notre Dame can have one of, if not the best linebacking room in the country. He is a big part of that. It's not just Drake Bowen and Kingston and Jaden Osbury. Jaylen Sneed is right in the mix of all that to happen. I was pretty high on him in the spring because of the weight that he put on. He was one of the first people I talked about in the first defensive practice report out of spring. It's like, okay, I just saw that this cat just went and put on 14 pounds, and he's known for being twitchy, fast, sideline to sideline, and it looked like he didn't lose a step in individual drills and some of the 7-on-7 drills he was in. Now it's just you got to bring the rest of it along with you. You got to bring the football IQ along with you. And it's coming from a place where we absolutely want, with all of these guys. Some guys, the demeanor might seem a little bit more derogatory than others. It's not. I would love nothing more than KK Smith to absolutely break out in 2025 and the light bulb come on for Cam Williams, because then you're getting into the territory of who stops this offense. I would love nothing more.
Who's going to play Notre Dame in the title game? I mean, that's what we're saying. So who do you think is going to play Notre Dame in the title game if all these things happen?
Right.
Yeah. Right. But that speaks to the importance back to the very beginning. I love that you're saying that, Trev, because that goes back to the beginning of the show. And why is this a topic of conversation? This is why. Because the more of these guys that step up, the higher percentage of the players we talk about today, and we got one more coming, that step up this season. And actually, Vince, I may add a special teams guy onto this list here in a second. But the more of these guys that step up this season for Notre Dame, the better this football team is going to be.
Couldn't agree more.
And that's why this matters.
Could not agree more. We do have one final guy on this list to talk about, and we're taking a step back into the secondary. And he's somebody that also flies under the radar because of how he came into South Bend. It's because he came in as a walk-on. However, it was a 6'4" rangy safety that can absolutely hit as hard as anybody on the team type of walk-on. But we're obviously talking about Luke Talich. He is somebody that, based on the talent that is around him in the room, this is kind of his opportunity. He lived behind Xavier Watts for a little bit in 2024, 2023 a little bit as well. Adon Schuler has solidified himself in the starting lineup. Luke Talich has made a living off of being a special teams phenom the last couple seasons. Now it's his time to cement himself in the starting lineup on defense, or a part of the integral rotation of safeties on defense, to where it's not just, yes, he had the pick 6 against Florida State, but he's not entering games when it's 35-3. He's entering games when it's 3-3. And the defensive staff is confident in saying, hey, we got 28 on the back end of our defense. We're good to go. We're ready to rock.
Or he's entering game when it's nothing, because he's starting.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that with Luke is, because I'm a big Luke Talich fan. I think that there's a lot of people that look at him as a walk-on, when in reality he was a walk-on in name only. It was the only way they could kind of get him in that class, because they didn't have really room scholarship-wise otherwise. And fortunately for Luke, he came from a family where they were able to make it work, where he could pay his tuition for a year. But he was a recruited player. I mean, just was. And you have to look at him that. We got to stop looking at him as a former walk. He is a former walk-on, but his situation is very different than Jordan Faison's. Jordan Faison was not expected to be what he's been. I can just tell you with certainty, Notre Dame did not recruit Jordan Faison saying, hey, we think we got a steal here with this wide receiver kid, like that he's going to end up being a starter for us as a freshman. Like, they didn't start thinking that till like first day of fall camp. They're like, this number 80, this walk-on kid's pretty flipping good. Luke Talich was recruited with the thought that going into his junior year, he's going to be battling for a starting job. That's what he's recruited to do. Having said that, they've also recruited this position extremely well, Vince. And when you've got Jalen Stroman coming in through the portal, you've got Bronte Johnson going into year 2, you've got Jadon Blair coming along, you've got some talented young players that are pushing him. This is sort of that last chance for Luke, because if you start getting passed up by younger players, then now you're just in that special teams niche role player type of role, as opposed to a guy that's either A, a starter, or B, a very key rotation player. That's what's in front of Luke. And if he's in this role more so not because he's underachieved or disappointed or not lived up to expectations, but more so he's in a very unique situation where he's battling for a starting job against a transfer who's older than him, but then a lot of younger players, a lot of guys younger than him. And Luke also is a guy that played as a freshman on special. He was a starter on special teams the entire year his freshman year. He did not redshirt. That's how good Luke Talich was on special teams as a freshman. So he's only got 2 years left. If he gets passed up by Jadon Blair, Bronte Johnson now, that's just as a lot in life. So this is a big fall camp for him, to really step up and say, hey, I'm not just some try-hard walk-on guy. I'm a really good athlete. I'm a really good football player. I belong here, and I'm going to show you guys how important I am. And at the very least, Luke's got a chance to to earn a very key rotation role, where you go from your number 3 safety a year ago is a solid 5'10", 190-pound guy, to where now your number 3 safety is potentially a 6'4", 215-pound rangy athletic guy. That's the minimum of what Luke Talich is looking to earn this year, if not an outright starting role. At the very least, be a very key, play 30-plus snaps a game, part of that rotation. That's the opportunity he has.
But the bottom line is Luke Talich could be a starter in a lot of teams around the country. A lot of teams around the country. Notre Dame has done a really good job of recruiting safety. And, he's always been kind of that second team guy who is reliable and does his job and all of those kinds of things. And, he's not Jadon Blair. You know what I mean? Like he's just kind of he's in the Burnham category, in my opinion. He just kind of gets forgotten about. And it could be the walk-on thing. I don't know. It could be a number of things, right? I think he could be one heck of a third safety on this team. Like that's where I see him ending up at the end of fall camp. I think he'd be one heck of a third safety and eventually get to the point where he's kind of the third starter. You know what I mean? He's playing enough reps back there at safety. They're bringing him in enough where his snap count is going to be similar maybe to the other 2 guys. But it's all right there in front of him. And not unlike a lot of other guys that we've talked about already, there's a lot of young guys just banging on the door right behind him. If he's not going to step up, then he's going to get passed up, right? And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying that could happen because of the depth of this team. Like that is what makes this show so unique. This topic is that Notre Dame has depth like we haven't seen in fill in the blank, right? Like they've got super depth. And that's why these guys, we're talking about even some younger guys, that this is their last chance because even younger guys are going to pass them up. So, and I think Luke Talich kind of falls in that category. Like he has the opportunity to do something special at Notre Dame. And if he doesn't do it this year, I think it would almost behoove him to go someplace else and be a starter and do what he needs to do, right? If he wants to play. I think he could be that guy this year. And I think that could be a lot of fun to watch because I think he's a really, really good player. Not a lot of other guys that I've seen do I like more coming down the alley to make a hit. I can tell you that. He's fun to watch, man. He is a lot of fun to watch. If he can harness all that and just be that long, rangy 6'4" guy, long arms, all those things, I think he could be a real asset to this defense in the back end.
Yeah, that Penn State punt returner knows how hard he can hit.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, he's not afraid to hit somebody, man.
Sure isn't. Well, and look, when I look at a guy like Luke Talich, I think the battle between him and Jalen Stroman this fall camp, I think, is going to be really interesting because the two younger guys are freak athletes. Bronte Johnson, he's a 6'2" kid. He's rangy. He's a great cover player. The staff felt comfortable enough moving him into the 2 deep behind Leonard Moore in the boundary, moved him from the safety position when he came back from injury. That's how highly they think of him in coverage. Jadon Blair, highly touted recruit, 6'5" safety, freak athlete, had a really, really good spring. But then you look at two of the more, I guess you could say, veterans in the room. Luke Talich has been in the safety room. He's now going on, his 3rd season in the safety room, but lived more on special teams. Jalen Stroman has live game reps as the starting safety at Virginia Tech. Had a really good year in 2023, good enough to where if he had a good season in 2024, various outlets were giving him potential day 2 draft grades. So what is that going to look like between Luke Talich and Jalen Stroman? That's some of the opportunity on his plate, on Luke Talich's plate, along with still trying to hold off some of the younger talent that will also force their way onto the field. The safety room this offseason, the remainder of this offseason, is in an interesting spot because I don't know of a world where you can realistically play a 5-man safety rotation, but this staff might just be left with no choice but to do that because
find some kind of role. Yeah, does somebody move to the number 2 nickel? You find some kind of role. Yeah,
right.
Last one, real quick. That's not part of our show. Noah Burnett, senior year, transfer from North Carolina, has a bit of a rough spring. Notre Dame's bringing in one of the best freshman kickers in high school football into their roster this year. Noah Burnett, in my opinion, based on what I saw in the spring, is going to have a very short hook if he doesn't perform well, which in turn makes this his last chance. He's stepping in, and hopefully he can be as steady as Mitch Jeter was when Mitch was healthy and be what he was 2 years ago at North Carolina especially. But the situation he's in, guys, he's another senior that I view as a guy that enters sort of that last chance opportunity where, dude, if you don't step up and do it, there's a big-time freshman that Notre Dame will have, in my opinion, no problem turning the reins over to if you can't get it done. I mean, if I'm going to go with a guy that's inconsistent making field goals, I'm going to go with the guy with the monster leg that's going to be here for 4 years.
And yeah,
and even it's like,
no,
if
I totally get it.
Who I can't count on, then I'm going to put 6'2" or 6'1", 215-pound stud freshman that's got a cannon for a leg.
Yeah.
I'm going to put him in there and deal with that, as opposed to a senior who this is his last year. The only reason they stuck with Mitch Jeter last year in that same situation is because A, they didn't have Eric Schmidt on the roster, and number 2, Mitch Jeter's issues were more health related than they were he's just not able to be that guy. And we saw what he did in the postseason.
And they rushed him back too. He didn't need to be back as soon as he was. But the backups weren't doing it either. And the other piece of this is there's right now there's one backup kicker on the roster. There's the walk-on, and then Schmidt. And Schmidt's a combo guy. I mean, he's a punter first. He can also kick the crap out of the ball.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. He's a better punter than he is a kicker. There's no doubt about it.
Going into his senior year, he was primarily being recruited as a punter and a kickoff specialist.
Correct. I think he's going to be the kickoff guy this year.
Agree. He had a great senior year as a kicker. And that's partly why Notre Dame really turned up the heat on him, because they were looking more for a kicker, not a punter.
Right.
And he had a great senior year, to where I would argue, based on his senior season, Vince, he's every bit the kicker that he is the punter now. When you saw him, because you saw him at camps,
which was a year ago,
that was not what he necessarily was.
Right.
But he had a really good senior season.
Gotcha.
In that regard, which is
Fair
why
enough.
he's now pushing.
Right. I mean, he could be the first guy at Notre Dame since the Fitzpatrick kid way back in the early 2000s to be the kicker and the punter.
Yeah.
It's at some point in his career. There's no doubt in my mind, because he is that good. He is that kind of a guy. And that also goes to the point of, and I don't want to harp on special teams, but people are recruiting combo guys now because of the roster limits. Like the specialist room's the first one to get chopped. Right. And so you can't have 4 walk-on kickers and 3 walk-on punters and all these different things just in case. You got to get some combo guys in there. And Eric Schmidt is like the best combo guy out there, in my opinion. I mean, he's just got his kickoffs. If this is what they want to do for kickoffs, he'll put it out of the back of the end zone every single time. I don't care about weather. It could be a tornado in his face. He'll still kick it out of the back of the end zone. I've never seen anything like it.
But that's the situation that Noah Burnett's walking into.
Correct. Yeah. It said Schmidt's going to be breathing down his neck. There's no two ways about it. So that's going to do it for our offensive / special teams talk about guys that need to potentially step up. Last chance you type situation. We have one more section to go, so please stick around with us. But before we get to that section, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button, that notification bell. Share with your family and friends. Of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. We've got all kinds of intel over there right now. If you have never been on the board before, now is the time to get over there. It's the off season. It's recruiting season. There is intel galore over on the boards. That is where you want to be. Just follow the link at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Sign up. It's the best money that you can spend. I promise you, you will not be let down in this regard. So make sure you check it out, boards.irishbreakdown.com.